Google researchers find vulnerabilities in HashiCorp's Vault.
So Mike, this story you got for us next is about a pair of authentication vulnerabilities in HashiCorp Vault?
Yeah, so this one comes from Project Zero, which are the security researchers at Google that focus on 0 days. And in this particular post, they're looking at HashiCorp Vault, which is this password manager, kind of the core capabilities, but you can also use it for creating short-lived credentials. And specific to this story, it integrates with again these public cloud providers. So this post talks about the AWS and the Google Cloud Platform, the GCP authentication methods that are kind of integrated into HashiCorp Vault. And this is a tool that's widely used. A lot of enterprises use this as sort of this vendor cloud agnostic secret manager. So you don't have to use Cloud A and Cloud B, right? So you have this one central place to use it. So they give a little bit of background on how you authenticate to Vault. You can use things like LDAP, use other providers and identities, but you also can use the IAM, the identity of each cloud provider. So they talk a little bit about specifically AWS is where they start. In their example, it's about a Lambda function, which is again, this sort of a PaaS service that you can run code without having to have a server. And you can assign to those Lambdas roles. So you can say this Lambda can access, say, this S3 bucket. It can do these certain things. In this case, they talk about how maybe it can query a database. But you can utilize those AWS roles and assign it to your Vault roles, which allow you to basically access the secrets around that database inside Vault. So they kind of go through this. I thought it was really interesting how they walk through finding this vulnerability, because he talks about some of the dead ends he ran into. I tried this, thought that was too hard. I tried this other way. I think what helped is that this is open source, so he was able to actually look at the code directly. But you talk about some of the session security token service. How AWS does their credentials, how you sign requests, how that works with Vault, and ultimately leads into being able to set up this this kind of dedicated identity realm that you can just spin up. Do your own role mapping, and how you ultimately can inject some JSON, kind of hide it in the XML response that comes back from the request. So ultimately, they're able to fake Vault into sending these credentials back with a role that shouldn't have that access. Again, kind of going through, they have a proof of concept for the exploit, and talk a little bit about how this is obviously a hard problem to solve, especially when you're using third parties, right? So, Vault is leveraging this external, basically black box, right? The AWS authentication. Same thing with GCP. So they decided, well, it works for AWS. Let's give GCP a try. And a lot of the public clouds have very similar implementations. They're probably obviously different, based on which the cloud provider is. But they talk about again using the authentication from IAM. And then GCE, which is the Google Compute Engine. And this is similar to the Lambda, where you can assign a role to a VM, right? And it can do certain things kind of autonomously. And again, kind of go through, again, looking at the code again, right? Kind of walks through these JSON web tokens and is able to, again, find a similar kind of vulnerability and extract out and access these credentials out of HashiCorp Vault. So this was patched. Let's see, they talk about the versions here. So this was disclosed to HashiCorp, and they fixed it in versions 1.2.5, 1.3.8, 1.4.4, and 1.5.1. So obviously, if you're not on those versions, you want to patch to ensure that you're protected from this. Certainly, if you're using those plugins, those providers. So more cloud, right? We talked about we're going to see this more, and I also read, I don't know if it's linked in this article, but the response back from HashiCorp was actually really positive. Like, how, this is what they expect to find things, that it's, responsibly disclosed, they were fixing it, and it was addressed. So, yeah, an interesting sort of post about, again, some of these kind of bigger players, AWS, GCP, HashiCorp, which is a big, again, a big vendor that's used at a lot of corporations. So interesting one.
So, so I'm trying to understand. So this particular, actually a pair of vulnerabilities. So ultimately, the vulnerabilities were against the HashiCorp Vault, right? Now, in each one of the cloud providers, he had to use whoever this researcher was, right? It's part of the Google group, right?
Right.
They had to use slightly different variations to try to take advantage of the vulnerability, but the vulnerabilities themselves were very similar, and ultimately let you get to getting to this vault, right? I mean, in essence,
that's right.
So ultimately, the techniques that were being used to get to the vault through the two different providers were somewhat similar, right? So I'm assuming that the thought was, hey, I did this on the on the AWS side, so more than likely I can probably find a very similar vulnerability through the Google cloud side as well. Which I'm assuming that again, and I don't know a lot about this HashiCorp Vault, but I'm assuming that that's something that's also used in some of the other cloud providers, right? So is it safe to say that if the person or somebody out there decided that they wanted to go see if this vulnerability now, the patching that's being done today, has closed it down, and actually that's another question. The patching that is being done, does it have to be done by each one of the cloud providers separately? Or
so it's actually patches to the HashiCorp Vault. And it's really
okay.
the vulnerabilities were how HashiCorp interface with these different providers.
Okay.
So it was in Vault. It said that a part of the fix was it added some allow lists for which headers could come back. Stronger validation of the response. So it's sort of about that response parsing. And again, I like the comment that the researcher makes, which is you're interfacing with this black box, this third party. How can you anticipate all the responses you're going to get back? Which I think is what he certainly for AWS is what he took advantage of. Which is there's a way I can inject something here which causes a change, and so it's probably more falls into the input validation, right? Those more type of vulnerabilities where it seems like that's where they kind of shored things up. There's definitely on the Vault side and just, how it interface with these providers, which, they have their own, they're not standards, right? They have their own way of signing their own responses, and they're different depending on the provider. So, a lot of these tools like Vault, like some of these other platforms, we see that interface with a lot of different, API, proprietary systems, right? Like these store platforms that can talk to hundreds of different vendors, right? And all the responses are different. And there's probably opportunity for more things like this where you don't know if in certain cases you may get a different response, and in this case take advantage of it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, it's interesting, and interesting, sort of reading how the researcher ended up doing it. Like you said, had tried a couple things, had hit a couple, dead ends, but persisted. Which we know that's exactly what researchers will do. Especially this group, I know that's kind of what their bread and butter is finding this kind of stuff. But you can expect, as you said before, with these more and more of these things running out in the cloud, that you've got more and more people who are willing to go the extra mile, and they're not going to get stopped by the first couple dead ends that they hit, right? They're going to keep trying, and eventually they'll probably find something, unfortunately.
Yeah. So what one final comment he made, which I thought was interesting, was we have all these tools we can fuzz. And I think to quote him, it says, sometimes you can only discover things by manual code review and having an attacker mindset, right? So I'm sure they run a bunch of fuzzing tools, and this never came up, and just persistence, like you said, and that's just line by line looking through the code, and nope, that's where I go. So interesting.